All right, welcome to this explainer. I want you to start by doing something for me. Just picture a ticking clock. Second by second, the hands are moving in a perfect mechanical circle. But now, imagine that ticking begins to actually slow down. The empty spaces between the seconds start to stretch out. Because as human beings, we rarely experience time as just a neutral measurement on a dial, do we? When we're stuck waiting for something, time takes on a very real physical form. It transforms into weight, it becomes pressure, it stretches into these vast, cold distances. So today, we're exploring the language of patience, and we're going to map out exactly how different cultures across the globe internalize the passage of time. So what if time isn't just a clock on the wall, but emotional pressure? Let that thought sit for just a moment. Imagine time not as seconds passing, but as an invisible, physical weight resting directly on your shoulders. Think of an empty train station where the light is slowly fading out. The shadows are stretching across the cold concrete platform. And you know, the longer you stand there in the silence, the heavier the air itself feels. That is exactly what we're talking about here, the sheer physical weight of emotional endurance.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, Beyond the Ticking Clock.
Moving right into our first emotional landscape, Section 2, Becoming a Stone of Patience. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how in the emotional landscape of the Turkish language, time and patience aren't just these abstract concepts kind of floating in the air. They are deeply tactile, they're incredibly heavy, and they are forged in absolute silent stillness. Consider the phrase, Sabır taşı olmak. Literally, to become a stone of patience. This idiom perfectly describes someone enduring an immense emotional difficulty for a very, very long time. The Turkish language actually imagines patience as absolute hardness. Think of the rough, ancient texture of a cold stone sitting totally undisturbed for centuries. When a person reads, they absorb an incredible amount of atmospheric pressure. But just like that stone, they don't break. They take the weight, they bear it silently, and they simply endure. It's honestly a profound, quiet testament to sheer survival. And this physical heaviness extends to another beautiful but somewhat melancholic Turkish metaphor, beklemekten ağaç olmak, to become a tree from waiting. Picture the painfully slow, deliberate pace of a tree growing over decades. When someone waits for so long in this culture, the human body metaphorically freezes. It transforms from something dynamic and moving into something deeply rooted to the earth, entirely trapped in utter stillness. You're forced to just weather the changing seasons, the harsh winds, the fading light, as time simply passes you by. The very act of waiting literally alters your physical form.
Let's shift gears a bit. Section 3, Medicine and Measurable Resources.
So, if Turkish treats time and patience as this heavy, unmoving stone or wood, the English framework takes on a completely different material and conceptual form. Modern English holds this really fascinating dual nature when it comes to time. On one hand, time is an active, soothing agent, right? Time heals all wounds. It's a medicine that softly dulls the sharp edges of our pain over days and years. But conversely, look at how we view the end of waiting, running out of time. In this paradigm, time behaves like a limited physical resource. It's like water slipping helplessly through your fingers, or grains of sand draining in a glass. It's highly consumable, constantly and relentlessly slipping away from us. So, the crucial point is how this duality deeply affects the English understanding of patience itself. We say, patience is a virtue. Here, waiting calmly is entirely stripped of that physical heaviness and silent suffering we just talked about, and it's replaced with mental discipline. It becomes a measure of inner control and moral maturity. Basically, you're deemed a virtuous person if you can simply manage your internal reactions, keeping calm while that precious, consumable resource of time ticks away into nothingness. Which brings us to a breaking point. Section 4, When Patience Finally Breaks. Because, what happens when that illusion of control just fails? We step out of the stoic endurance of Turkish and out of the measurable control of English and into this stark, cold fragility. Contribe truco. Patience broke. Just say that phrase to yourself. Patience broke. In Lithuanian, patience is not a heavy stone that can bear infinite weight, and it's definitely not a limitless virtue. It actually behaves like a fragile physical material. Think of a taut wire pulled entirely too tight, or a thin sheet of ice on a freezing lake. When someone can absolutely no longer emotionally endure the weight, the material fractures under the pressure. It snaps. It is a quiet, heavy, and absolute end to endurance. And in this cultural framework, waiting is never, ever just a passive act. The Lithuanian emotional language heavily associates waiting with emotional coldness, vast distance, and utter silence. Think about walking down a desolate, cold winter street. The light is fading fast, the air is just biting at your skin, and the freezing distance between you and your destination feels miles and miles longer than it truly is. That is what waiting does to a relationship in this language. It's an active, freezing force. It slowly changes how people relate to one another, pushing them further and further apart into the desolate cold, until connection is entirely lost.
Let's move to Section 5 and see how this all builds together, how we survive the wait. So, we've looked at the heavy stone, the ticking resource, and the fracturing ice. How do we synthesize these diverse threads to truly understand what it means to survive the wait? Well, before we map out all the differences, we really must acknowledge a beautiful parallel here. Across thousands of miles, both Turkish and English actually share the exact same conceptual framework of time as a healer. Zaman her şey analogy, time is the medicine of everything, and time heals all wounds. Despite their vastly different linguistic roots, both cultures seek immense comfort in the idea that time eventually brings a soothing balm to human suffering. And this brilliantly illustrates our point. When we map out these metaphors, we see the true psychological weight of how we internalize the passage of time across the globe. For the Turkish language, the psychology is rooted in weight-bearing endurance, right? Standing completely still like a tree or an ancient stone, quietly absorbing the pressure of the atmosphere. For English, survival relies on inner control, managing a measurable limit, and really proving your virtue against a ticking clock. And for Lithuanian, it's the stark, melancholic reality of fracturing under pressure, the quiet acknowledgement that human endurance has a physical breaking point, completely surrounded by emotional distance. Ultimately, what you should take away from all this is that time is literally never just a clock on the wall. It is the invisible emotional pressure of our lives, and we survive this pain in entirely different ways. Some populations survive through the silent, unyielding, tactile strength of stone. Some survive by simply trusting in time as an inevitable, flowing, healing medicine. And others understand waiting as a cold distance, a physical, freezing pressure that we can only hold for so long before we inevitably fracture and break. I want to leave you with a final lingering thought. As you face your own waits in life, the indefinite delays, the desperate hopes, the quiet, silent anxieties, how are you internalizing that time? Are you becoming a stone, quietly bearing the immense weight? Do you feel like you're running out of a precious, measurable resource? Or are you a fragile material shivering in the cold distance, just about ready to break?